there are 5 human senses that you can work off of, and architecture gives you that opportunity to sort of activate or accentuate all those senses.
You're about to enter the Archgyan podcast.
Archgyan podcast.
India's first and very own architecture podcast, where you'll hear the insights, experiences, and journeys from India's leading architects. No matter what your skill level is, together we'll build on our knowledge and share architecture's greatest stories ever told. Now, here's your host, Manish Paul Simon.
Hey guys, welcome to the Archgyan podcast. This is episode number 18 with Senior Architect of S9 Architecture, all the way from New York, Saurabh Goenka. Here's a small brief on Saurabh to give you guys some context. Saurabh works as a Senior Architect and BIM Lead at S9 Architecture. S9 Architecture is a distinguished award-winning architecture and engineering firm in New York. Saurabh plays a leading role in design and management of many of the firm's landmark projects and tallest skyscrapers. Saurabh's commitment to high-quality architectural design and his expertise in technologically advanced design techniques resulted in a portfolio of several iconic projects. Saurabh's passion for architecture is driven by the fact that it influences millions of lives and strives to change them for the better through the process of creativity. Some of his projects at S9 are vastly popular and have been covered by major agencies like the New York Times, CNN, Wall Street Journal, Dayzine, Architectural Digest, and many, many more. Saurabh completed his bachelor's in architecture from School of Planning and Architecture, New Delhi, and then went on to do master's in urban design from Carnegie Mellon University. He is a licensed architect as well as a lead professional. For you guys who don't know what lead is leadership in energy and environmental design and is a highly coveted certification. In his free time, Saurabh likes reading, hiking, biking, and quote-unquote dancing the tango. And every so often, he also likes to do what he calls the quote-unquote BYOB walks, which has nothing to do with booze. Alright, so let's get right to the episode. Welcome to the show, Saurabh. How you been?
I am good, Manish. Thank you for having me on the show.
It's a pleasure. All right, so before we venture into the various themes of today's topic, give our listeners a brief history on how you got into architecture, your architectural education, and how you ended up in this super cool firm in New York.
Well, so I started, really, how I got into architecture really started at my school. I used to be really good at mathematics, and I was a good painter and a sketcher. So that's where it all started, really. I did engineering drawing studies in high school. That's where I got interested into more and more of the technical aspects of architecture as much as the design. After high school, I took the what they call the AIEEE, the examination for architecture education in India. Mm-hmm. I did well in that, got into School of Planning and Architecture, which is one of the greatest schools in India. And that's where my architecture journey really began. First year in school was difficult because it was a completely different environment. It took me a while to understand the nitty-gritties of the profession and what it really takes to be an architect.
And you were from Delhi as well?
I am born and brought up in New Delhi, yes.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
So it took me really a while to understand the profession, and one thing that School of Planning and Architecture taught me was not how to design, but rather how to think, which is an interesting aspect of how when you look at architecture, you never know what you're going to be designing in your career. Right. You might be doing a school or an airport or a hospital, and each project just takes a very different approach and design thinking to be able to do well. So really, the journey through SPA was amazing. After School of Planning and Architecture, I did a couple of years of work at this firm in Delhi called Abhimanyu Dalal Architects, which do a lot of high-end residential architectural work all around India. It was, again, one of the I still recall one of the incidents at the office, which sort of changed my thinking or my approach towards architecture. It was one of my first few days in the office, and I was given a task, which was about 2-day task. I was excited and eager to finish the work. I finished it in a day, and the next morning I walked up to my principal and I asked him, "Oh, I finished the job. Is there anything else I can do?"
Right.
So he was leaving for a meeting and he said, "Oh, you finished it and you don't have anything else to do?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Okay, go out, take a walk in the park and enjoy your day. And when I come back, we'll talk about work." I said, "Okay." I saw it was like a prize for me. So I left and I just had a great day outside. And I came back in the evening. He was in the office. He called me to his desk and he said, "Okay, what did you do?" And I said, "Well, I walked out and I saw places. It was a new environment. So,
Right.
I was just getting familiar with it."
Right.
So that's when he gave me a 45-minute lecture on if I did not have anything to do, I could have found things to do, and and also, it was very motivating in the sense that, if you could live your rest of your life as somebody who is told what needs to be done, or somebody who finds things and figures out and helps the process or improves the process rather than following it all the way.
Awesome.
So that was a big change for me. It just changed the way I started looking at different things.
It gave you more. You felt more responsible, I guess.
I did, and more motivated too. Because I was not only looking at things the way they are, but always thinking about the way they could be or why they are the way they are, versus just following it the way it is as is. Okay, so it was a great experience at Abhimanyu Dalal Architects, after which Abhimanyu Dalal Architects also do a lot of urban design work, actually. That's where my interest in urban design was generated.
Awesome.
One of the big reasons why I wanted to do urban design was to inform my architecture, because one of the big reasons or theories rather I follow to do all of the architecture work that I do is the context and the forces around your building that affect your design, or rather inform your design. So urban design, I thought, would be a way not only to learn the larger scale of things, but also to understand how the surroundings affect the buildings. So that's where I pursued my master's at Carnegie Mellon School in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Right. Okay.
It's northeastern part of the United States. Great school, great teachers. It was a 12-month program, very, very intense. I did not have a summer semester break. It was 3 semesters, but pretty much one after the other. So very intense, but a lot of information in that 12 to 16 months time.
So it is not a 2-year course, but rather 1.5 years.
It was a Yes, exactly. So there were two kinds of courses. There was a course which was sort of programmed for fresh grads versus people who had some sort of experience in the field already. Right. So it was like a 12 to 16 month versus a 24-month course. So I was selected for the 16-month, and that's what I pursued.
So you worked for a year and a half in Delhi and then pursued the master's, or?
About 2 years, actually exactly 2 years.
Right, awesome. And how did you, after post-masters, what is your plans? Was it like you wanted to work in USA for some time, or you wanted to come back?
No, I always wanted to have some work experience here. I wasn't planning for years ahead in the profession, but I always wanted to have some experience and to apply the knowledge that I gained. before I actually go back home.
Right. And till the time you did masters, there was no exposure to BIM. If is that true?
There was very little.
All right. All right.
I did use a lot of, I won't say a lot, but a little bit of Revit in my undergrad education, my undergrad school at SPA. It wasn't part of the curriculum per se, but a bunch of us just tried to use the
most
software.
Most of us tried to experiment with those softwares.
Yeah, and when I look back at the model I created in third year undergrad school, I just laugh at it every time. But it's a process, like I say to everybody. It's just like a process that once you're at it, and especially in your professional environment, even if you don't know it, it's a software. To me, BIM first of all is not a software; it's a process. Right. And there are different softwares that allow you to complete that process effectively. Right.
All right. So let's get to how did you land this job at S9 Architecture?
Well, after I finished urban design, I moved to New York to work for this firm called Ismail Leva Architects. Right. It's about 100 people firm doing a lot of residential high-rise work in New York City. That's where I was exposed to BIM on an everyday basis.
Right.
So a lot of projects at Ismail Leva Architects, they do a lot of design work, but several of the projects are the architect of record jobs where there would be a design architect, and then Ismail would take the project from DD and bring it all the way to CDs. Those are the kind of projects I worked on for the most part.
So DD, just for our listeners, is design development, and CD is construction, right?
Construction documentation, correct.
All right.
So really understood how to put together a high-rise building as a fresh grad out of school. Well, it was sort of a setback, even though I had some sort of experience before back home in India. Once I moved here and really started my professional career, I realized I had to sort of restart in the way I was working or doing things. It was just a very different environment, different scale of work, from single-family residential to high-rise residential or mixed-use retail as well.
And it was all BIM. There was no CAD or anything involved.
Very little CAD, but mostly BIM. We would still use some CAD for just supporting the process, but for the most part, everything was BIM.
Right.
And then just got this opportunity. I wasn't really looking, but I got into a conversation with this gentleman at our firm who still works here. And, we got to talking, and I discussed the kind of work S9 was doing at the time. And it really aligned with my philosophy or the way I thought of architecture and the profession. And that's why I decided to make that move. I'm very glad to be here. It's a great firm and a great and working environment. We do some amazing work, and we support each other in what we do. So I'm very happy to be here.
Awesome. So the best part about this firm is they've got some really fascinating projects which range from adaptive reuse to high-rise residences. So could you walk us through some of the projects that S9 Architecture has done?
Sure. So to give you a little bit of background about S9 Architecture, we are about 80 people firm and growing. We are based off of New York City, and we have this unique, well, I wouldn't say unique, but we call it unique in the sense that it's based off of a concept called modern contextualism.
Right.
It is a design approach that we follow on almost every project. We are not a firm which is motivated to build objects in space, but rather design based off of the programmatic needs and the environmental and the economic and the contextual forces behind every site and every project. So that's one big part of our beliefs,
Right.
and we believe our projects are part of a very larger whole.
So how do you guys approach projects? Is it mostly through this context analysis that you keep doing, or?
Yes, we do. Every project we see, so there's a few things about every project. There's a client's needs, the project site, the environment around it, and the economics of the project, the program requirements. So we basically we don't have preconceived notions about every project. We take all these pieces together and, sort of just sit together and talk and see what we can do and how we can do justice to the project or to the design where it is located in, this in today's architecture world, a lot of design work is seen as objects, which some of them are really beautiful objects too. I have nothing against creating objects, but whether that object is sitting in New York City or in Mumbai or in Singapore makes that object special to that location and that place. And that's what we're looking for in all our work. So most of our work is high-rise residential. We do a lot of retail and office work as well. We are doing some hospitality and institutional work as too. Most of our work is based locally in New York City.
Oh, awesome.
But we are doing a lot of work around in New Jersey, Atlanta, and Canada, all around. And, we're growing.
And talking about New York, at least I have a sense that New York is jam-packed with a lot of buildings, right? So how do you guys land up with projects? And I don't know if this is I have a preconceived notion that there is no space to build. So
yeah, you would be surprised, especially in Manhattan. I think a lot of construction work that is happening in Manhattan, and which is right now, there is a lot of construction work happening in Manhattan.
Right.
Most of it is demolishing 5, 6, 8, 10-story buildings and building high rises in place of those.
Okay.
So yes, there isn't any space, but they keep creating more and more space. And then when they run out of space, they build buildings over train yards. Find space.
Awesome.
But keep building. So a lot of construction happening in New York City right now.
And which are the ones which you guys are going to start? I would like to talk about few projects, which is one of those is the New York Wheel, which, what I heard is going to be bigger than the London Eye, right? So is that project going to happen or?
So New York Wheel, yes, you said it right. It is planned to be almost 1.5 times the size of London Eye. London Eye diameter is 400 feet. This one is designed to be at 630 feet tall.
Oh, wow.
So the project design is complete, and our role on the project was to design the terminal building and the parking garage and do the master plan development around it.
Right.
One big part of our role as architects was to connect the neighborhood to the waterfront using this project. So at this point, we are being told that the project is going to be completed. There are some financial issues related to the project that the client is right now dealing with. The terminal building and the parking garage are actually built, and the garage is currently operational as well.
Right.
Yes, we are told it's going to be built,
Awesome.
And I hope it does get built because it's one of the projects. It's going to be the landmark of the future,
It will be added along with the Empire State Building or Times Square as well.
Yes, it's one of those projects which is going to be talked about almost for centuries. They expect about 5 million visitors every
Oh,
year
wow.
when that project runs. It's about a 40-minute ride to complete one circle of the wheel. At one point, about 1,200 passengers can ride
Oh, wow.
the wheel. Yeah, each capsule carries about 40 people.
Awesome. So this was envisioned in BIM, or how were you guys going about this project?
Yes, all of the work on this project was BIM. It had to be. There were more than 50 specialized consultants on the project, and we were doing this project in collaboration with Perkins Eastman Architects.
Right.
And the wheel was a design build project by this firm in Rotterdam, Europe. And then we have engineers from mechanical to electrical to structural to security.
Oh, wow.
And since this project is such a big project, there was approvals. Almost everybody was involved in terms of the public agencies, from NYPD to city planning to Public Design Commission. So the project went through a lot of approval processes, and BIM was really an integral part of the process, because managing so many consultants and the design of the project of this large scale wouldn't have been possible using any other process but BIM.
Right.
I was closely involved with the design documentation and construction documentation part of the project. We were about 10 people in the architecture firm working on it, which is like a huge team for a project. But managing in-house teams was in itself a big task, and eventually there was a time when there were almost more than 100 people working on the model at the same time.
Whoa.
I think it was one of the biggest BIM projects I've ever dealt with so far.
Brilliant. And before we proceed, could you elaborate on what kind of the scope of work a senior architect entails in a firm like this?
Well, I think one of the biggest philosophies of S9 is, yes, they are particular about what you should be doing, but they rather let you choose your own path. So we don't believe in titles and designations as much as we believe in the kind of work we do and what we bring to the table. So as a senior architect, my role would be very different than another senior architect at S9 Architecture. If you talk about just what I do, I am currently managing about 3 projects. A couple of them are under construction. One is in design stages, so they take a lot of my time. But my role is also as a BIM lead. I am doing a lot of support and management of other projects in the office.
Awesome.
So most of my time, goes in evaluating, talking to people, seeing where they are, seeing how they can improve their process. And at the same time, I'm also doing a bit of architecture, because I don't want to be, separated. I am a BIM lead because I like the process, but at the same time, I am an architect by heart. So I am an architect first and then a BIM lead.
And you make sure your models are healthy and all that.
We do. We try to. We try to.
All right. Let's talk about few projects that you've completed, which is the Empire Stores, which is both an adaptive reuse project, right? So could you maybe walk us through Empire Stores?
Empire Stores, it was an adaptive reuse of an old warehouse building. It used to be used for coffee storage in the old times, and we took this project, and it's a beautiful building. They don't build these kind of buildings anymore. So there was really no reason to demolish and build something in place of it. So we rather wanted to celebrate the architecture of the building as is, and sort of open it out to the public and present it,
Right.
and sort of exhibit. So that was the whole idea behind what we did. So we tried to preserve as much as we could. One big design move that our principals sort of were adamant about was to be able to connect the waterfront to the neighborhood. So we carved this hole through the building and connected the neighborhood through to the waterfront, and
Right.
the central courtyard and this connection gallery sort of became the heart of the project, from where everything else evolved.
So the waterfront abutting the Brooklyn Bridge and all that, right?
Correct.
Right.
Correct. It's right by the Brooklyn Bridge, and the design itself, you would see a lot of metal sort of replicating the industrial aspect of the neighborhood and the Brooklyn Bridge right next to it.
Right.
The building itself contains a lot of retail, some museums, some offices, restaurants, and then it has a rooftop beer garden, which is sort of, again, another idea of taking people through various parts of the building and creating these moments for them to experience and enjoy.
So it's retaining the old facade and infusing a lot of contemporary elements within.
Correct. So the old facade, we introduced a lot of steel, metal, glass, just to add to the character of the old building. But yes, for the most part, we tried to retain as much as we could.
All right. So since this is an adaptive reuse project, do you guys still use BIM because you have to kind of document the whole building prior to construction, right?
I wish we did, but on this one we did not.
Okay. But it
because
is
this
possible through point cloud system and all that.
Absolutely, and we are doing a lot of adaptive reuse work now in the office, and all the work that we are doing now is all BIM.
Oh, wow.
And just like you said, using the point cloud information, we realized that even though it's an adaptive reuse process, it's in fact all the more reason to use BIM than to use CAD, because you really need to understand the pieces of the existing environment in front of you all the time while you're designing, and no better than using BIM for projects like these.
Absolutely. And when we talk about high-rise residences, there's no better way to do it than use BIM, right? So could you maybe elaborate on certain high-rise projects that you guys done?
Several. In terms of residential work, I would say 111 Varick Street, 532 Neptune Avenue, 160 East 22nd Street, 205 Water Street. There's several residential projects we're doing. Park Liberty North in Jersey City. These are all, some of them rental, some condos, 30, 40, 50-story residential buildings
Right.
in and around New York City. The best part about BIM is that even though these projects are different, they are very similar. So one of the big philosophies that we work, or I rather promote as an architect and BIM lead, is to separate the known from the unknown. It's almost like designing a car, I would say. Every car is different, but it's got pieces that are the same. So as long as in your design process you can identify similar pieces, for example, bathrooms and kitchens in a residential building, the accessibility guidelines or the code regulations, once they are all built into the design of the bathrooms and kitchens, there's only that many configurations you can do. Once you figure out the configurations that you can do versus what you like, you have a library of things that you can use from a project to project. Now, BIM helps you to take that process to the next level in the sense that it is an adaptive environment where you can add, remove, cut, paste, and test things much faster than how you would do in typical traditional working process. And you can visualize them immediately. So as you keep going or keep working on more and more projects, you keep developing that library or the database of information for yourself. So again, our design philosophy is to make every project different from each other, or rather make it suited to the context that it is sitting in, but then at the same time use advanced architectural technology to make it cutting edge and make it, more accurate and more precise.
All right. Another doubt which just came up in my mind is, especially in India, when we handle a lot of projects, there's multiple changes during the phase of a project, right? So we tend to go back to the drawing board, and we still have this CAD system running. So how well does BIM help in making changes on the go?
Again, I think it happens here too, Manish. Changes happen all the time.
Okay.
It's just part of our process.
Right.
It's slightly better, I would say, in the little experience that I've had while working in India. But then I was working on projects which were like multi-million dollar homes, and they were really, really driven by the client needs. I almost built a medium, let's say a 30-story high-rise at the same cost as I was building a home back home in India. You would think that. So BIM really helps. I would say, I always say changes. People say changes. It's better to do it in CAD than to do it in BIM environment. But I say that's not true, because most of the change or most of the edits that would happen, I still think you are better off being a BIM environment than being in a traditional work process environment, because you will always miss things. Like once you have a set of 200 drawings, when we create these residential towers, a typical construction document set would be anywhere from 200 to 300 architectural drawings.
Oh, wow.
And any change or any adjustment has to be reflected through the entire package. There will always be things that will be missed out in a regular traditional process, or you would end up spending almost 5 times as much time repeating to do the same change over and over again. Just to give you an example, one of our projects at almost 75% construction documentation, the client decided to change the floor-to-floor heights.
Okay.
Now, just think about if you were doing this similar project in CAD, you would have to go through all your elevations, all sections, all details, all plans, and every sheet that you have created, each one of those 200 sheets, to make sure that you adjusted those levels. In a BIM environment, it took us about 4.5 days to fix everything everywhere.
Oh, wow. Okay. Awesome.
So yes, no, I whether it's a small project, as small as a home, or as big as a 200-story building, I would use BIM if I can on the project.
All right. And something which also piqued my interest before we get into the BIM part of this episode, let's talk about this project called Doc 72. And the most fascinating part about this project is the structural system. So how did you guys go about this project, and how did the design come up?
Doc 72 is another great project. It was challenging, the site, because of the site constraints mostly. It's like a very thin and narrow and long site, with water on three sides. It's part of old Navy yard where they would basically build ships. But transforming into this very, very vibrant live work environment. And our project itself, we're really one of the projects of this whole master plan development. Our project is about a 650,000 square feet mixed use building. The design started it's inspired by the context and the client themselves. So the client, one of the major anchor clients, WeWork. I'm sorry. Our principals visited their office, and we really learned from the kind of working environment they have, with a lot of collaboration and a lot of energy within the forum. So really, Doc 72 was designed as part of that concept in mind. The building itself had to be raised from the ground because of floodplain requirements. It's right by the water, and after Sandy, the storm that happened in New York City a few years ago, the regulations have become very, very strict, and FEMA, which is the agency that regulates the building base floodplain elevations, have become very strict about about the rules. So there was an underground tank below the building which had to be retained, and then the entire building had to be raised off of the ground so that the habitable spaces are above the floodplain. So the challenge became a design intervention, and the design idea was, one, to lift the entire building and make it almost looks like a container yard or a ship in itself to me, and then use the ground level to really create an active public environment. So the lobby, the reception, and then all the public spaces sort of gel into the ground with using ramps and slopes, and then the rest of the building is office.
And this was also a BIM project.
It is a BIM project, yes, definitely.
Since you guys worked with WeWork and WeWork having a reputation in specializing in interiors, did you guys do the interiors also in BIM?
We were hired. Our services on this project were primarily core and shell.
Right.
And there was separate interior designers based off of different tenants. But yes, I'm being told that all the interior work that is being done is also being done in BIM. A lot of construction work, got supported because of BIM as well. And that happens in several of our residential projects too. At Neptune, one of these residential buildings in Coney Island, I was visiting the site the other day, and I was walking around with the contractor. He had this iPad in his hand, and basically he was looking at all the structural system in the building.
Oh, wow.
And he was walking around the building just pressing buttons, and I asked him what he was doing, and the guy said that, I'm just checking what work has been done today. And when I looked at his screen, I could see orange and green colors, and he was basically selecting every beam or every column that has been installed and making it green, in the sense that he was updating the information to everybody at the time as the things were being installed.
Let me guess, he was using Navisworks, or he had his own?
No, I think he was using PlanGrid.
Oh, right. That's a startup on which Autodesk recently acquired, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
All right.
Correct.
All right.
So like the power of the BIM environment is in not only construction documentation, but what you do after that as well.
Absolutely.
So a lot of our projects, the contractors are actively using our models, taking it to the next level, and doing construction off of the models.
It also predicts the life of a building, right?
Absolutely. The building management system, the life cycle, it runs through the project. It gives you alarms. It gives you, your mechanical system servicing is due in 20 days, so you better find somebody to do it. Oh, your air conditioner is going to expire in 5 months, so you should probably get the process going now so you can have it by the time it expires. So, it's giving you everything. It's pretty much taking care of your lighting, your air conditioning, you name it, and it's talking to all the systems that are in your building right now.
Wow. I just feel like I'm in the movie, I know whichever futuristic movie that is, right? Just made. I feel like I'm part of those movies right now.
No, but it just sounds very cool. But it's until everything sounds cool until you know it, and when you know it, it just seems very seamless. It's the beauty of architecture itself. I say architecture is seen by everybody, but what's more is everything except what you see. There are 5 human senses that you can work off of, and architecture gives you that opportunity to sort of activate or accentuate all those senses.
Hey guys, so that is the end of the first part of this 2-part series with Saurabh. I hope you learned a ton from this episode, which I definitely did. And if you'd like to learn more about BIM, Saurabh's work, S9 architecture, or whatever we spoke about today, just head to archgyan.com/18. We have written extensive show notes, which I'm sure is going to help you a ton. On the second part, we go in depth on BIM, its pros and cons, building information modeling in India, and how it will inevitably be used throughout the world, and what it has in store for us in the future, and lots more. Follow us on Instagram to get access to behind-the-scenes footage, daily Gyan drops, live sessions, and much more. All to help you become better architects. Just search for Archgyan. Stay healthy, stay happy, and build a better tomorrow. Cheers.
You've been listening to the Archgyan podcast. We're still building the community. Please share this knowledge with someone you know who could benefit. Just send them to archgyan.com, where you'll find our free newsletter, and for more podcast episodes, search for the show on any major podcasting platform. Don't forget to subscribe where you're listening right now. And if you liked it, leave a rating or review.